1970 AMC Gremlin. The AMC Gremlin was sold for one-third the price of most small cars. Fitting, considering it looked like two-thirds of a car. That said, the Gremlin was a stroke of business genius, cheap to develop and perfect for its time. It was even a runaway success, at least by AMC's modest standards. But did it have to be so ugly? It could have been worse. AMC once considered a shortened version of the Hornet, which design chief Dick Teague said looked even worse. But considering he approved the Gremlin's design, we're not sure his opinion can be trusted. 1970. Buick Riviera. The second-generation Buick Riviera was a stunningly beautiful car from 1966 to 1969, with its sleek lines and hidden inboard headlights. Then 1970 happened. It takes a moment to fully appreciate just how ugly this car is, probably because your brain instinctively blocks out trauma. But look long enough, and you'll see it. The way the grille looks like it's melting off the front, the way the skirted rear fenders seem to be growing mold, and the way the whole body looks bloated like a drowning victim. Riviera sales, which had been steadily rising in the late 60s, dropped like a rock when this abomination hit showrooms. 1970, Ford Thunderbird. Late 1960s. Thunderbirds were, if not beautiful, at least inoffensive. Then Ford decided to slap a giant beak on the front for 1970. Seriously, Ford? The emphasis should have been on thunder, not bird. 1970, Porsche 914. Designing a well-proportioned mid-engine car is difficult, though Chevrolet has finally figured it out. But the Porsche 914's awkwardness isn't just about the vast stretch of empty space between the B-pillar and rear wheel. Something about this car just feels off. The awkwardly raked greenhouse, the overly squared-off body, the unadorned lines. It all makes the 914 look like a car that has fully embraced its own dorkiness. And while dorky can be endearing, a Porsche should be a car you dream about, not the reality you wake up to. 1970. Saab Sonnet. 3. The third-generation Saab. Sonnet was designed with American buyers in mind, and apparently, someone told the Swedes that Americans love cars with massive front overhangs. That was a joke. Saab, a joke. Nevertheless, the Sonnet 3 showed up with this ridiculous snout, made even worse by the massive 5 miles per hour bumper tacked onto the front. As if the proportions weren't bad enough, the elongated front end sharply contrasted with the abruptly chopped-off tail. No wonder Americans didn't take Saab seriously until the 900 arrived. 1972. Subaru GL Coupe. Subaru built a reputation in the US for practical, efficient small cars that were sensible, if not stylish. Then their designers tried making something stylish, and this is what happened. Our guess? The Subaru GL Coupe was just a little too long to fit in a shipping crate, so they simply chopped 8 inches off the tail, stuck on a bumper and tail lights, and called it a day. 1973. Leyland P76. If you thought British Leyland only made the British miserable, the P76 proves they tried to spread that suffering across the Commonwealth. This was a big car built by Leyland Australia, and it seems the design goal was to eliminate any lingering nostalgia for the British Empire. The trunk was designed to hold a 44-gallon drum, hopefully filled with something flammable. Besides being ugly, the P76 was built with all the legendary quality control British Leyland was known for, in other words, none. After just 2 years and 18,000 sales, the P76 was history. 1973, Reliant Robin. Three-wheeled cars don't have to be ugly, though most are. The problem with the Reliant Robin isn't just that it's ugly, but that it looks so desperate. Even its predecessor, the ironically named Reliant Regal, managed to retain a smidgen of dignity. But the Robin looks exactly like the kind of car you'd buy when you couldn't afford a real car. Austere, bug-eyed, and seemingly content to wallow in its own misery, the Robin begs for sympathy which we feel completely justified in withholding. 1974. Bricklin SV1. Malcolm Bricklin is the man responsible for foisting the Subaru 360 and the Yugo onto American buyers, which should be considered proof of malicious intent. His one attempt at making a car of his own resulted in the Bricklin SV1, which was terrible in so many ways, including visually. Giant bumpers, gun-slit windows, and those oh-so 1970s turbine wheels make it look like a van with shaggin' wagon spray painted on the side. Build quality was abysmal. Body panels warped before they were even installed. The pop-up headlights often refused to rise, and the 90-pound gull-wing doors would bend or break under the force of their hydraulic actuators. That's if they opened at all. Many owners found themselves trapped inside by the car's laughably unreliable electrical system. Ugly to look at and ugly to own, the Bricklin had it all. 1974 Sebring Vanguard City Car. Ever wonder why electric cars got a reputation as glorified golf carts? Here's your answer. The city car, brainchild or brain fart of Sebring Vanguard, was literally a glorified golf cart with a 2.5 horsepower motor, later upgraded to a whopping 6. It had a 40-mile range and could accelerate to 60 miles per hour in... Oh, wait. That's how long it took to hit 25 miles per hour. 1974. Ford Mustang II. We won't get into the debate about whether the downsized Mustang II was a stroke of genius or a national tragedy. That's a discussion for another time. But what we can say is that it looked ridiculous. The real crime, however, was the Ghia model. Slapping on opera windows, a padded vinyl roof, and color-matched bumpers to give the Mustang a luxury vibe? Unforgivable. 1975 AMC Pacer. AMC advertised the Pacer as the first wide small car. A clever marketing gimmick, but one that resulted in a truly bizarre design. Its massive glass area was meant to improve visibility, but instead made drivers feel like goldfish being boiled in their own tank. 1975 British Leyland Princess. The Princess looked like a hatchback, except it wasn't. Instead, the tiny trunk opening made it both impractical and unattractive. Not long after it debuted, British Leyland collapsed. No one was surprised. 1977 Datsun 200SX. By the late 1970s, Datsun had earned a solid reputation in the US, with practical economy cars like the B210 and 510. Then they made this. The 200SX had a front grille seemingly inspired by an electric shaver and a C-pillar so massive that rear visibility was a joke. 1977 Volvo 262C. The story goes that when Henry Ford II visited Sweden in a fleet of Lincoln Continental Mark I's, Volvo was so impressed that they decided to make their own version. The result? A stupid idea that birthed a stupid car. Volvo sent perfectly good 262 GL coupes to Bertone in Italy, where they chopped 2.6 inches off the roofline, making it nearly unusable for anyone over 6 feet tall. 1978 Oldsmobile Cutlass Aeroback. When GM decided that the Buick Century and Oldsmobile Cutlass should have a European look, the result was this disaster. Technically, the Aeroback wasn't even a hatchback. It had a conventional trunk lid, though no one cared because they were too busy not buying it. These are the cars that, against all logic, actually made it past the concept stage. Most were failures, and a few even buried their brands. But at least today, they give us something to laugh about.